All right, so it's straight up 7 o'clock. We appreciate everyone joining us tonight for our presentation on the MUDs in the Woodlands Municipal Utility Districts. We are pleased to have with us Jim Stinson, the General Manager of Woodlands Water, to discuss with us the MUDs, how they work, how they impact our daily lives here in the
Can't
Woodlands.
hear you, Ted.
Not on mute.
Never mind, that was me.
All right, so thanks. And what a great lead in. I was just going to say, I'm pleased to introduce Walter Cook, our co-host. Walter and I are on the steering committee of Township Future, and we are happy to once again host our speaker series, where we bring non-biased, important information on timely topics to the residents of the Woodlands. So we appreciate that. Walter, say hi to the crowd.
Hello, crowd. Turned your microphone off, Ted.
All right, so there we go. Now we won't have any more glitches. I'm not going to press any more buttons. So with MUD elections coming up May 7th and early voting starting next week, we thought it would be very helpful for the residents of the Woodlands to get out some important information regarding the MUDs and to possibly clear up some information that's going on out there and that's being circulated. So, again, we want to thank all of you for joining us. We want to thank Jim Stinson for being with us today as our guest speaker. In the quest of full transparency, I want to note that I do serve on my MUD as a MUD director. I'm not up for election this cycle, but I just want to put that out there so that we are all on the fair level playing field here. So as I mentioned, our speaker, Jim Stinson, is the General Manager of Woodlands Water, the operational arm of all things water here in the Woodlands. Jim has been in his role since 1994 and manages the day-to-day operations of our water and sewage needs. Jim and his wife live here in the Woodlands, and he has really seen the area grow and has been an instrumental part of all the water sources and activities and the development. Tonight, Jim's going to give us an overview on the operations of Woodlands Water with a slide presentation, and then he'll answer some questions that's been sent to us, and then we'll go to you guys, the audience, for questions, and Jim or Walter or myself will answer those as well. So Jim, thank you very much for joining us tonight, and we want to go ahead and get straight to your presentation. So
thank you. Happy to be here.
Yep, thank you. Anything else you want to state in terms of your introduction that I might have missed?
No, I'm very pleased with that introduction and just happy to be here and participate.
Thank you, Jim. I think you can go ahead and share your screen and kind of give us your presentation and we'll go from there.
Okay, I've host is disabled sharing my screen.
Walter?
Yep. Stand by. Okay, you should be able to share your screen now.
Okay, very good. Okay, thank you, Walter. Woodlands Water and the 10 MUDs that we serve. The Woodlands Joint Powers Agency was created by special legislation in 1982 to serve the Woodlands MUDs. In September of 2019, we officially changed our name to the Woodlands Water Agency, which I think reflects a lot more accurately what we do. Our vision is to provide exceptional water services for our customers in the Woodlands. And then our mission to manage our water with fiscal integrity, efficient business practices, responsive operations, infrastructure maintenance, community partnerships, and environmental stewardship. What is a municipal utility district? It's a political subdivision of the state of Texas authorized to provide water, sewage, drainage, and other services within the MUD boundaries. MUD boards, each of the 10 MUDs we serve have 5 directors. Those 5 directors are elected in a general election according to the laws of the state of Texas. That election is usually held in May. We had an off season last year because of COVID. The directors serve staggered 4-year terms and again, are usually held in May. And typically they have been held here at the Water Resources Building. How were new muds created in the woodlands? As the villages and additions to villages were developed, muds were often utilized to serve those areas. New muds were created. Why weren't new additions absorbed into existing muds? We get that question often. And the answer is this has happened. Several of our muds served by Woodlands Water have expanded their boundary and tax base, but only if it was a good financial decision. Where does our water come from? The muds purchase water, wholesale water, from the Woodlands Division of the San Jacinto River Authority. Where does our water come from? In addition to the groundwater that we get, we have 38 wells, but we also get surface water from Lake Conroe through what's called the GRP division at Lake Woodlands. The water distribution is handled through about 350 miles of water distribution lines that the muds operate. We also maintain and operate about 5,000 fire hydrants or flushing valves. What's the process for sewage? The muds, again, through the Woodlands Water Agency, operate and maintain about 350 miles of sewer lines. We have approximately 20,000 manholes. This would be storm sewer and sanitary sewer. Sewage is delivered for treatment at one of 3 treatment plants operated by the San Jacinto River Authority. The treated effluent is then discharged into either Panther or Bear Branch, Lake Woodlands, or Spring Creek, and eventually into the San Jacinto River. The muds operate approximately, 1,000 acres of drainage ditches in the woodlands. Drainage is directed for eventual discharge into the West Fork of the San Jacinto River. We have had numerous rain events that have caused widespread street ponding. And I want to emphasize, when you see photographs like this in your neighborhood, this is a ponding situation and has been built into the drainage system. The ponding acts as storage. In certain areas of the woodlands, pond a little more than others, but the goal is to keep water out of the house or out of the garage, but ponding in neighborhood streets is part of the drainage system and generally does not indicate a problem in the system. The drainage systems are designed to reduce the risk of flooding, not to eliminate that. And since 1994, we've had 6 rain events that have exceeded the regional design standards. We do have a current project that we are working on to improve drainage along Research Forest. If you can see my clicker, here is the Woodlands High School. Here is the neighborhood of Capstone. Here is the Bear Branch soccer fields. And for those of you that have been around a while, you've seen this portion of Research, along with the portion in front of the high school, underwater on numerous occasions. I'm proud to announce that MUD 67 has taken the lead and made an application to the Texas Water Development Board and received approval for a grant and a 0 interest loan for 30 years to make improvements to Panther Branch and Bear Branch in this area, which will keep Research Forest Drive open during major rain events, improve the neighborhood drainage in Capstone, Twinberry around the high school, and other areas adjacent to Research Forest. So that project will be beginning in the next year. I think we've got some hydraulic modeling to do to help solidify the numbers that we're projecting. But overall, it's been a real success with MUD 67 for leading the way. We have 4 other MUDs, or 5 MUDs contributing or participating in the project. Those would be MUD 47, MUD 60, MUD 7, and MUD 67, as I mentioned earlier. Regardless of where you live in the woodlands, we believe everyone should have flood insurance. So just keep that in mind as we hit hurricane season each year. If you don't have flood insurance, it's relatively affordable, and we just live in an area where everybody should have flood insurance. I mentioned earlier about surface water and the groundwater reduction program and the partnership with the San Jacinto River Authority. This is a slide of Lake Conroe and the surface water plant. This plant was put in place back in 2016 to meet groundwater reduction mandates from the Lone Star Groundwater District. Pipeline was put in to serve southern Montgomery County and the Conroe area with surface water to help take stress off of the aquifers and the groundwater, primarily in the Conroe area in South Montgomery County. Historically, we had been on 100% groundwater for many, many, many years. And you can see that this is a graph depicting declines that were documented in several water wells in the Woodlands from 1980 through about 2014, a constant decline, well over 200 feet, some areas close to 400 feet. And you can see when surface water was introduced in 2016, the aquifers rebounded some, and certainly the sharp decline in the levels was leveled off, and we think that was a success. How much water do we use from our aquifers and how much from Lake Conroe surface water through the GRP? Current ratios are about 65% groundwater and 35% surface water. I'm happy to report going into next fiscal year, we will be using a blend of about 50% surface water and 50% groundwater, which again is much better for the aquifers and relieves the stress and helps with subsidence, helps with fault movement, and helps the water wells stay in balance. Year-over-year water, I'll say savings or water reductions in single-family homes, which has been a combination of our public outreach, our water conservation efforts. But you can see we peaked in 2011 with about 5.6 billion gallons of water consumed. And since then, we have had a continual reduction or certainly an overall decrease trend in water use throughout the Woodlands. Management and governance of the Woodlands Water Board of Trustees, Woodlands Water. The Woodlands Water Board of Trustees are 10 members appointed by the respective MUDs. We have a general manager, a deputy general manager, and then 4 divisions: customer service, field operations, finance, customer accounts, tax services, and water awareness and public education. This is kind of an interesting organizational chart. And I think the thing I want to point out here is we've got about 28 full-time employees now and a number of part-time. And this is fewer full-time employees than we had when I came here in 1994. We have, through technology, outsourcing some functions, our head count, total head count has actually gone down in the last 20 years, which is kind of a rare feat for a governmental entity. What does Woodlands Water do? Again, we provide drinking water, wastewater, and drainage services to our members. These photographs indicate that the jobs can get a little difficult at times, but we've got a very devoted and loyal staff. Many of our employees have been with us over 25 years. In fact, the majority over 25 years. So we're very proud that once we get an employee, we tend to keep them. We also provide maintenance and repair, backflow prevention, water quality monitoring and testing, customer service, inspections, meter reading, billing, and public education. I've talked about our water conservation efforts over the years. We've won a number of awards from the Galveston Bay Foundation, the Texas Water Development Board, Association of Water Board Directors, the Houston Galveston Area Council for our outreach, public outreach, and water conservation efforts. We're also proud to report that we offer a 20% homestead exemption. Each of our 10 MUDs offers the 20% homestead exemption, which is the largest homestead exemption currently allowed by law. And we have also over 65 and disabled persons exemptions that vary between the MUDs, but overall, we're very proud of the tax relief that we have given our customers. And Walter and Ted, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Jim. That was a very enlightening presentation, and I was very impressed with the slide that shows the decline in water demand because of the conservation efforts. I mean, that's amazing that we went so significantly on that nice steady stream downward. That's very impressive.
And what I didn't emphasize that makes that even more impressive is through that same time period, we were growing about 3% per year in population. So
very good. And Jim, you might want to just touch on, I know you talked about the 10 muds that are being serviced by Woodlands Water, but there's also an 11th mud in the Woodlands that services Creekside. I think that's mud 386. It's important to note for our viewers that although they are not serviced, quote unquote, by the same umbrella that some of the other ones was, their service levels are no less than what everyone else in the Woodlands is getting under the Woodlands Water umbrella. Can you just touch on that just for a minute to talk about the difference and why? I know, understand it's in Harris County, but why that's a little different as far as the Woodlands service goes?
yeah, they are mostly in Harris County. That mud is kind of unique, very unique. It's a Harris County, Montgomery County mud, with a majority of it being in Harris County. And the decision was made many years ago by the leaders in the community that because Harris County has different regulations, different standards than we have, that it would be operated by an independent third-party operator and not part of our umbrella. It just didn't quite fit with our efficiencies. So, but they are still part of the Woodlands and are served and treated no different from any of our muds that I know of.
Right. Again, just important to note that their service level is not any less. Because we know that Woodlands Water does a tremendous job. Well, thank you for that, Jim. Can you give us a quick update on the meter replacement project? I know that's been a significant project in the last several months, and tell us how many meters you replaced and kind of what the overall objective for replacing the meters and so forth.
Yes, our old mechanical meters that have been utilized in the Woodlands for 20 plus years were beginning to wear out. And as they wear out, they register slower, not faster, but the accuracy just goes down. And so we were looking at upgrading those, and the decision was made by our directors, all 10 muds, to replace that with an ultrasonic, a very accurate meter that had a life, a guaranteed life of about 20 plus years with over 90% accuracy during that period. And the new system also is what is hooked into what we call an automated metering infrastructure, where the residents can now log in to our WaterSmart portal and keep up with their water usage on an hourly basis, almost a very short time period. And if they have a leak, if they have an irrigation system going off that they didn't realize was programmed to go off, they can get an alert which will let them know what's going on with their water consumption. We have about 34,000 meters that are targeted to be replaced, and we're at about 33,000, or we have a little less than 1,000 to go. So overall, I think it's been a successful program, and I know I find the benefits of being able to track my usage very helpful. And we are educating and informing our customers to do the same. And if you have a leak, you can tell it. But primarily, if you're irrigating and didn't realize it, you'll get a notice on that. So awesome. It's really a good way to conserve water and have the customer engaged with the water consumption.
Well, it sounds state of the art, which I guess is very helpful in terms of detecting leaks and managing water usage.
Yes, sir. It is.
Very good. Well, thanks for that. I think Walter has a question for you that came to us. Walter, do you?
Yeah, Jim, let me ask you about how many customers does Woodlands Water have?
We have about 35,000 what we call accounts. So that would be commercial and residential accounts.
Okay. Now these new meters, do they still require the meter man to come into your yard and read the meter, or is that done?
No, we're saving.
Deal now.
Yeah, this technology that I failed to emphasize is saving all the muds upwards of $600,000, $700,000 a year in meter reading costs because they're read electronically.
Okay, well, that's interesting. Let's talk a minute about the flooding and this Spring Creek detention project that's been around for a while. Can you tell us what that is and what the current status is and what it's
Yes.
intended to do if it's ever created?
Following the floods, we had floods in Tax Day, Memorial Day, and then Harvey. Our MUDs went out into the mud neighborhoods and performed numerous drainage improvement projects that were identified to tweak the system or improve the system. But the residents and customers along Spring Creek, that issue far exceeded what the MUDs were capable of fixing. But the MUDs that have residents along Spring Creek, primarily MUDs 1, MUD 46, MUD 7, and MUD 60, felt like they wanted to do something to jumpstart some improvement that might help customers and residents along Spring Creek. So we did a preliminary study. We contracted with Harris County Flood Control District and found a couple of areas upstream of Spring Creek, actually in Waller County, some large areas of vacant land that detention could be constructed on, which would lower the water surface elevation in a major flood event in Spring Creek through the Creekside area, in the Grogan's Point area, and the Grogan's Mill area, up to 5 feet. So the MUDs were very excited about that and are in actually the second phase of analysis with that potential project. Now, I will tell you, recently we've received notice that both of the areas of land that were targeted for detention, and these are well over 1,000 acres, there's been interest in developing one of those as a residential subdivision, and the other one there's interest in putting in a solar farm in conjunction with Rice University. So we're going to try to work through those stumbling blocks over the next few months, but we have spent a lot of effort to identify something that could be done to help flooding along Spring Creek, but it's yet to be finalized.
Let me ask you a question, Jen. Now, you said it would be a detention facility. Can you tell us the difference between a detention facility and a retention facility?
For the average person, it's the same thing. It's a way to hold back water and discharge it at a very slow control rate into a downstream receiving stream that reduces the water surface elevation. For a discussion purpose between us, there's not much difference.
But it wouldn't create a lake. It wouldn't be
No, it would,
like Conroe, for example.
no, sir. These would both be what we call dry detention ponds, where the bottom of them would be dry.
Except when it rains a lot, and then it would
That is
fill
correct.
up, partially or completely fill up.
And just to give you an idea of the scale, both of these, the dams that would be constructed are in the 40-foot range. So it's a pretty high detention dam that would have to be built for those two ponds. So it's a big structure.
Do you all have any cost figures for all of that? Getting the land, building the dam?
It's several $100 million.
Yeah. So it ain't gonna happen tomorrow or the next day.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. All right, Ted.
I probably should have mentioned, we do want our viewers to be able to ask questions. And if you use the Q&A emblem at the bottom of your screen, we will certainly get to your questions. And Walter will read those to Jim a little bit later on. I do have a question, Jim, regarding the separation of MUD taxes and tax rates, water rates and tax rates. I know it gets a little confusing, but various MUDs have various tax rates for different reasons. And I think all the water rates are the same because we have the same source. But can you explain for our viewers how and why different MUDs have different tax rates and why we all have the same water and sewer rate, if you will?
The MUD tax rates are primarily dependent on the debt. You'll find that most of the older MUDs have a lower tax rate because they have paid off or paid down their debt. And then the newer tax rates tend to be the highest, and that's the case with the Woodlands as well. But we do have a number of MUDs that are in the single digits that have paid off their debt, and very proud of that. So that's what all the MUDs strive to get to that point. But we have still a few of them that have debt and are continuing to pay that down. The water and sewer rates can fluctuate some between a couple of MUDs. I think at this point, out of the 10 MUDs that we have, only 2 have a water sewer rate that's not the same as the others. And you know, the MUD boards have the right to do that. We here in my office, we think that there's a lot of value in having a uniform rate across the MUDs, but a couple have gone a little different direction for different reasons. But overall, I think about 80% of our MUDs do have consistent retail water and sewer rates.
And Jim, when you talk about the water rates, and I know you mentioned in your slide, in your presentation, the source of the water and where we get the water, and you use the word wholesale water rate. Can you describe for the viewers what that means to them, to the end user? When you say wholesale, it seems like, okay, well, that's a wholesale cost. There must be other costs added to that. Can you just talk very briefly about that process?
Yes. The San Jacinto River Authority Woodlands Division is our wholesale provider. So they charge the MUDs a rate to deliver water. It's a per 1,000-gallon rate, and to treat the wastewater. The MUDs then take that rate and convert it into what we call a retail rate, a residential retail rate and a commercial retail rate. And that is intended to collect enough money to certainly pay the wholesale rate and also aid in the renewal, maintenance, repair, and renewal of the MUD water, sewer, and drainage facilities. And then there's also a component on your water bill called the surface water conversion rate. And that is the rate that we pass through we collect from the homeowners and pass it through to cover the cost of the surface water coming in from Lake Conroe, and then what we call a GRP pumpage rate. So it's not rocket science, but it's kind of complex. But we have them separated on our water bills as the surface water conversion fee, and essentially that's the fee you're paying to take the stress off of the aquifers and supplement your drinking water source and supply with surface water.
Good, very good. Thank you, Jim. And I know it is complex and it's a little challenging in the Woodlands overall because we have so many different layers of governance, if you will, and it tends to get a little complicated, but it's all worth it in the end because we live in such a unique community, right? So even though we have to maybe go through a different hurdle or over a different hurdle or two, I think in the end it's worth it. So Jim, we need to turn just a minute to some things that come up in the community. You know, here at Township Future, our objective is to try to put clarity to issues that are out there. And now with the MUD elections getting so much attention, there's a lot of, I guess, misstatements that are out in the community. And our objective, one of our core principles, is to try to bring clarity to that. So that being said, I know there was a statement. I won't call it a misstatement at this point, but I know there was a statement made in the public a while back, and this wasn't too long ago, but I'd like to have the opportunity to clear that up. It was said at a meeting that, and here's the quote, "The MUDs have been raising rates without approval." So I'm not sure what that person intended, but can you briefly discuss the process of, one, raising tax rates and why that would be necessary, and two, briefly talk about the process of how water rates are determined, which you kind of just talked about. But when somebody says that, you know, the MUDs have been raising rates without approval, I don't know what that means.
I'm not sure either. The tax rates, I don't think any of our MUDs have actually raised the tax rate since I've been here. We have a clear history of, if not reducing the tax rate, well, at least keeping it level. But the overall, I think the majority of the time, over the years, our MUDs have actually lowered their tax rate. So that rate wouldn't be approved. And if they did want to raise the tax rate, it would go through at least 2 meetings. And each year we have hearings when we set our tax rate. We have 2 hearings, a preliminary and then the final tax rate. So it is certainly in a public meeting and open to the public for comment on the tax rate. And the same is for the water rates. You know, the MUDs usually look at their water rate in October, of each year. And then if they're going to adjust it or increase it, it generally takes effect in January. And we have adjusted over the last few years our retail sewer rate, but our wholesale sewer expense has gone up. And sometimes we pass that on to the customers, but it's done in a public meeting, in an open meeting, and then we do a notification to the residents before it's actually implemented. So to raise the tax rate or adjust the tax rate or the water sewer rates, it can't be done without a public meeting.
Are there any statutory requirements, either limitations or caps or anything like that, that maybe this person is referring to that one of the MUDs didn't follow, or some MUD didn't follow any kind of statutory guidelines about raising rates? I mean, is there any validity to that statement as it relates to statutory requirements?
Nothing comes to my mind. And now I will say routinely, the surface water conversion fee has increased over the years, but we pass that on to the customer. It's not, there's some of the surface water conversion participants will do an add-on to that, but we do a very transparent pass-through. Whatever we're charged, we collect that same amount from our customer to pay that bill to the GRP. So I'm not quite sure what that statement's about.
All right, well, thanks for that. I think Walter might have a question for you from his end.
Yeah, Jim, let's turn our attention to these MUD elections that are coming up. Now, these are elections of the members of the board of directors of the MUD, correct?
That's correct.
Not you. You're not up for re-election this year.
I am not. No, I'm an employee. I serve at will.
And so we got what, 10 MUDs cover the Woodlands, and to be eligible to vote in one of these elections, you can only vote for the directors that control the MUD in which you live. That was a complicated sentence, but each MUD has a certain geographic area that it covers, and you have to live in one of those areas to be able to vote for the directors. Is that right? Is that the way?
That is correct. You have to be a registered qualified voter in the MUD you're going to vote in.
And how do we find that out? Do we go to Woodlands Water online, or can you go to the county? Where do we get that information as to what MUD we live in?
You can actually, we have an interactive website on the Woodlands Water website where if you have your address, you can type it in or go click on and see what MUD you're in if you're not sure. And then another way is look on your water bill. We'll have what MUD you're in. I think there's a notation about that. So, and certainly give us a call or an email. If you're not sure, we're happy to take that call or email and help you with that.
Well, we've got like, 46 or so people running. And I just want to, I kind of take some of the fear out of this process, because you can only vote for the directors of the MUD in which you live. So you're not going to have to wade through 46 candidates to make decisions on who's better than who's worse and all that kind of stuff. So you got to find the MUD in which you live, identify the people that are running in your MUD, and concentrate your efforts on evaluating those people.
That is correct. And you can get a sample ballot for your voting precinct from the Montgomery County Election Administrator, and it will have what MUD you're in and who is running for that MUD board.
And Jim, as I understand it, this is the first time that MUD director elections have been held in conjunction with on a regular election day, where we've got city and county elections going on. Is that correct?
And actually, that's not quite correct. The standard mid-year May election cycle has always been where the MUDs landed. It's your school districts, your small cities, it's a standard election cycle for the May election. Now, last year, the MUDs had the last election cycle, they were in November, but that was because of COVID, and all May elections were deferred until November. But the MUD elections are routinely in May. Our MUDs and all MUDs across the state of Texas, that's the standard election day for MUD districts and many other other local political subdivisions, including cities.
So where would a voter go to vote? Is it your regular precinct? Is there early voting? How's all that working?
Well, this year it will be your voting precinct or whatever precinct is open. We have partnered with Montgomery County to host the election this year. Traditionally, our MUD and other MUDs have held their elections in-house, if you will. That's been a standard practice for many, many years for MUD districts and even cities. I think Conroe for many years held their elections in-house. But with the changes in the election laws and the difficulties with mail-in ballots, most political entities are going to partnering with the county, including our MUD, and I think Conroe is partnering with Montgomery County this year. And if you look in Harris County, most of the MUDs in Harris County are also partnering with Harris County. It's just gotten a little too complex and too difficult to host your own election. So I think going forward, you're going to see our MUDs and other MUDs as well partner with the county that they are in.
I assume there's early voting. When does that start? Is that May the 7th?
No, I'm thinking it's next Monday. It's Monday of next week.
Yeah, early voting starts on the 25th.
7th, that's right.
Yeah, early voting starts the 25th, and we'll post those dates and locations on our website as well. And I know it's throughout the county already, but we'll post it on our Township Future website as well.
And I assume the South County Community Center would be an early voting location.
It is.
To my knowledge, yes, it is. And I think there are a few other locations around the Woodlands for early voting, but I would encourage you to go to the Montgomery County Election Administrator's website, and they list all of those.
Yeah, okay, good.
And they list the locations for election day voting as well.
Good. Yeah, I do know that early voting starts on the 25th and it goes all that week, and then a couple days the following week, and then election day is actually May 7th. Jim, I want to just come up with or go back to one thing you said a minute ago, in that it's traditionally has occurred that MUD elections, not just ours, but MUD elections across the state, as well as other entities, have held their own in-house elections. Because I hear this sometimes from people that, again, not in the know, in that all of a sudden we now have become more, I guess, transparent with the MUD elections by joining with the county. But it's not for nefarious reasons. It's just for a matter of convenience, because even though the MUD elections were held in-house, that's traditionally the way they've always been done and the way they've been done across the state. Is that correct?
To my knowledge, certainly locally in our region, they have typically been hosted and held by the MUD. Yes. Okay. But I think, again, with election law changes and the mail-in ballot has gotten really complicated. And I think you're going to see our MUD and most MUDs partner with the county going forward. But in the past, that has not been the case. They have typically and traditionally been held with not partnering with the county, but held with in-house.
Yep. So again, the change is just for a matter of convenience.
That's correct.
Yeah. So we do want to get to the viewers' questions, and we have quite a few of those, I see. But I had one other, I guess, misstatement, if you will, one other statement that was made. I wanted to get some clarification on, if maybe you can help us out with that. And this was the statement: the MUD votes have been hidden from voters for years and are now being brought to the voters' attention. So again, I'm not sure what they intended when they say MUD votes have been hidden from voters for years and are now being brought to voters' attentions. I don't know if they were referring to, the votes taken at MUD board meetings, or if they were referring to the votes that we just talked about, voting for these board of directors. But you had said something earlier that the MUD meetings are all open to the public. Is that correct?
That is correct. The MUD meetings are held on a standardized calendar each year, open to the public. Public is encouraged to attend. For the last quite a few years, we posted our minutes and agendas on our website. The Woodlands Water Agency hosts a website that includes all of the 10 MUDs that we serve. So that information is now on the website and has been for several years, as far as the agendas and the minutes. And
so there's really no way to hide a vote, right? If a MUD board takes a vote on an issue, there's no way to hide that vote.
No, I'm not sure. I know that many of our during a MUD meeting, there are quite a number of votes where you get a second. I mean, you get a motion, a second, and then you call the vote. Many of those are unanimous. They're not always. And if they're not unanimous, of course, a vote is taken and it's recorded in the minutes. It was 3-2 or 4-1, whatever that may be. It's not a requirement that a roll call vote be made, but many of the MUDs, if it's a more controversial topic, will request that it be a roll call vote, so you will know what MUD director voted which way on that topic. So, but that's not, roll call votes are not routine. They're more reserved for critical or controversial type topics.
And when you say roll call vote, you mean that the director has to be identified as to which way he or she voted?
That is correct. When you would read the minutes, you would see Director Stanley voted yay or nay. And
gotcha.
Whatever, each director would have their vote recorded in the minutes, whether they were for or against.
Okay.
But the routine method is just to call a vote and to say it passed 4-1 or something, or 5-0. But sometimes if it's a more controversial topic, a roll call vote, that takes more time. You got to wait, and you got to record each vote. So it's not routinely done, but it is done in more controversial type situations.
It's unfortunate that these statements get out there in the public and we don't have time to get them cleared up before people run away with that. Oh my God, somebody's hiding votes. And it's just a shame that that happens. But again, it's our job here at Township Future to bring clarity on these issues. So that's what we're trying to do. So I know we do have several questions from the audience, Jim, if you're willing to take those. We have time for it. And I think Walter will kind of direct us in those questions.
Yes, we have questions. Larry Haynes put up the first question, and he asks or says, Trace Creek in Indian Springs has 12 houses that have flooded 3 times along the west side next to the George Mitchell Preserve. How difficult would it be to build a berm along the backside of the neighborhood? Would be about 8 feet on the north side and 2 to 3 feet on the south side where the last house that floods is. So the question's about building a berm to protect these houses in Trace Creek. Is that feasible?
Well, it's something that's feasible. The issue is when you build a berm like that, you're diverting the floodwater off of somebody and onto somebody else. So you would have to do a detailed study to make sure that berm did not adversely impact any of the homes adjacent or across the creek in that area. But that's the short answer to that. It's possible to construct it, but the difficulty is getting something built that doesn't have adverse impacts to somebody else.
I've got a question too. Since we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars to build this reservoir, if and when that ever happens, has any thought been given simply going to the people that have been flooded out and offering them twice the fair market value of their houses, buy the houses, demolish them and turn the area into flood zone, floodway, parkland? I mean, that would be a heck of a lot cheaper. And I bet those people would be happy to get out of those homes, which have a hit to market value because they've been flooded.
The topic does come up from time to time, but it has not been something that's been funded by the MUD districts to actually fund a buyout program. But we know the federal government does that depending on the severity of the home and how many times it's flooded, but it's not a program that the MUDs have currently entertained to do a buyout program.
I wish they would think about that, because that could be done in a year and would cost far less than this reservoir up on Spring Creek that may or may not ever cover reality.
And
all right, back to the question.
The reservoir on Spring Creek would not be a MUD project. That would be an Army Corps of Engineering, something much bigger than the MUD. Our MUDs just felt like something needed to be jump started to try to see if there was something that could improve and help their residents and their customers, and that was their motive there.
Okay, John Buckley, what is a $100 quote mud lot, close quote, and how many directors use these? $100 mud lot.
I think what he may be referring to is when MUDs are created, they have, the developer has to get directors to sit and they give what they call mud lots or director lots. And then the typical, as the mud grows and the area becomes developed, those mud lots are replaced with residences. And we've got 50 directors, and I think we have 1 or 2 holdovers for directors from many, many years ago when director lots or mud lots were the norm. And those get phased out, and I'm certain that the ones that are left in our MUDs will be phased out fairly soon.
Okay, Claude has a question. Is MUD 386 in a subsidence district? And is there any possibility of the legislature allowing all of the Woodlands to join the Houston-Galveston subsidence district?
And the answer is yes. 386 in Harris County is within the boundary of the Harris-Galveston subsidence district, Harris County, Galveston County, Brazoria County subsidence district. The Montgomery County is not part of that district boundary. There have been some discussions recently that might be something that Montgomery County should entertain. We know we've experienced several feet of subsidence in the southern portion of Montgomery County, up to 1 foot or more in some of the northern portions, and with groundwater pumpage, subsidence is likely to continue unless groundwater pumpage is reduced. So some discussions have occurred. You know, would it be appropriate to include either Montgomery County in that district, or maybe create something of our own? But to be determined, I guess.
Oh, tell us briefly, what is the advantage or disadvantage to a MUD that is not only a water wastewater provider, but also is part of a subsidence district?
For the MUD's perspective, there's not an advantage or disadvantage. It's just another layer of regulatory requirement regarding groundwater. The subsidence district in Harris County acts in many ways like the Lone Star Groundwater District acts in Montgomery County. They regulate groundwater withdrawal, but just have a different code that they were created under the Government Code of Texas.
Here's another question from Larry Haynes. Given drought potential, what is the estimate for the next 10 years or so with regard to water availability? Are we going to turn on the tap one day and just it'll hiss and no water comes out? Or
no, I don't think that's a possibility here, but it's a constant challenge to make sure we have adequate supply and to meet not only our regular daily demand, but those demands that occur during a drought condition. And we're pretty well placed here in the Woodlands. We've got groundwater and surface water supplies to help meet that extreme demand. It's not if it occurs, but when it occurs again. We know it will. And we think we've got adequate groundwater and surface water supply to meet that demand.
Anonymous attendee asks, does the conversion fee on the bill cover the treatment of the surface water?
The surface water conversion fee, yes, that money collected goes to pay for the treatment of the surface water at Lake Conroe and the pumping and the delivery of it. But treatment of it is certainly a part of the component of what they do.
Eleanor Stone asks, I live in MUD 46. There are 3 positions open. I received a door drop with 3 candidates requesting residents to vote for the block of 3. Is that normal for candidates to group together? What issues are driving? Has this nonpartisan election become political?
That sounds like it's going to be a question for you and I, Walter, not so much Jim, but Jim, if you want to take a stab at it.
I would just say, yeah, our staff and our employees and our organization, you know, we're here to serve the elected officials. During elections, we have to play a delicate role and walk a line and not get into those sorts of discussions.
Yeah. So let me take a shot at that for Eleanor. Just in general. I think what's happened is, we've seen a surge of candidates in the mud races. We have, I believe, 18 incumbents up for reelection, and there's 49 candidates that filed for positions. I've been here 22 years, and I haven't seen a surge of interest like that in mud elections. So I'm not sure where those extra candidates are coming from, or those other candidates are coming from, but I would guess that there's some force driving that, and maybe these three people have gotten together and decided to become a slate on their own, maybe, and that's why they're out there asking for your vote. So yes, it has, to say, what are the issues driving that? Has this nonpartisan election become political? It would seem, Eleanor, that it has become political from that standpoint.
Let me address Eleanor's question about, is it normal for candidates to group together? As a candidate for the township board who lost dramatically, I can speak to that issue. Yeah, it just depends. I mean, typically in township elections, and then before that in community association elections, nobody wanted to group with anybody else because you didn't want to hook yourself to a candidate that didn't have much, appeal to the voters. But certainly you can. I assume these people are, care about the same issues and are promoting the same solutions. But around here, I don't, typically candidates run on their own and don't join in a slate, but there's nothing against being part of a group or a slate. It's just, however each candidate figures they can get the most votes in the election. All right.
Let me just go back to that too, Walter. I think too, what might be happening is, these people have and these people meaning the candidates, all of them, have an opinion as to how maybe they can do things better. So maybe they have a mindset that's like-minded, and they think that, by them going against the incumbents, they can change things and maybe do things better. I'm not sure.
Cynthia asks, are mud board meetings recorded, and are the recordings available? I'm hearing that the meetings are not transparent because they are not live streamed.
The meeting, well, of course, during the COVID, we were allowed to meet remotely, and Zoom was the technology used. So during the period where we weren't allowed to meet, we were given an exception. So they were recorded for a number of months. Once we began meeting in person again, they were not recorded, but we have one MUD that has offered to fund the audio video recording equipment for the meeting room where we meet. That agreement was executed yesterday, and it will be submitted to our trustees at the May meeting. So I predict that we will have an audio video recording system installed in our boardroom very soon. Now, it won't be a live stream technology, but they will be recorded and then uploaded to the MUD websites within a matter of hours for public viewing.
Here's another question from Anonymous. If all meetings and agendas of the MUD meetings are posted online, then why are several of the MUDs missing the documents online? For example, MUD 7 is missing most of 2021 and 2022.
I would have to look into that. I didn't know that.
Well, if you could check it out and maybe shoot us an email and we'll disseminate it to the.
Yeah, if they're not there, it's
Sure.
an internal operational mistake of some kind, because they are to be posted.
Here's a question or a suggestion. How about starting a program to encourage/require rainwater capture for irrigation?
We do encourage rainwater harvesting. We have workshops that we participate in on a fairly routine basis, and have partnered with the township in the past to promote rain barrels, but it's currently not a requirement, but strongly encouraged.
Here's a question about candidates. What are the most important issues that we need to be aware of, and how do we find out where the candidates stand on those issues? Now, Ted, I know TownshipFuture is getting ready to publish something. You might address how voters can find out about the candidates.
Yeah, so we're going to partner, and I say partner, we're going to use the information that the League of Women Voters have captured from the candidates. So the League of Women Voters put out a questionnaire to all candidates, asking them to, respond based on the four, I think it was four different questions. So we're going to review that, look at that, and link that on our website and use and give credit to the League of Women Voters for having captured that information. And so as a voter, anywhere you can find good non-biased information, and some of it coming directly from the candidates themselves would be very helpful if they're all forthright in their answers. But that would give you a sense of how they feel, how they vote, maybe what, if they're incumbents, how they would have voted, what some of their track records are. If they are newcomers, and not incumbents, why is it that they, decided to run? What changes do they feel like they can make? So, keep an eye on our website over the next couple of days. We're going to get that out there, get that link done, and put that together. So that'll give you at least some information kind of directly from the candidates themselves.
What about the major issues, Ted? I really haven't picked up any major issues, but I don't get out much anymore. So if you heard what people are riled up about, or
I think, we talk about we talk about subsidence, as being a major issue as it relates to what we can and cannot do, for water. We talk about water usage and where it comes from. So, as it relates to the MUDs and what the MUDs can do, those are some certainly issues. I hear a lot of, I saw a couple of things on this feed of the questions about the transparency at the MUD board. There's missing information. So there's always going to be some of that out there, of course, because even though they're nonpartisan races, it does become political. So I think there may be a group of people, and again, I'm not identifying anybody because I don't know, but there may be a group of people trying to make something out of nothing, trying to make there is an issue when there isn't. I mean, from my standpoint, it seems to be the MUDs have run fairly efficiently over the years without any major issues, and we get good service, and Jim's staff provides an excellent service as it relates to providing water. So, and I think the MUD boards, for the most part, and I'm not endorsing anyone here, but based on the people who have served on those MUD boards, I think for the most part, they've probably done a very good job.
Okay, John Buckley asks, why did MUD 47 vote and fund a new strip mall when 1488 doesn't seem to need one and the project could flood MUD 47 residents?
That topic was debated for several months, and MUD 47. MUDs were created as a financing mechanism for developers. That's really, they're what they do. Gosh, MUDs have entered into reimbursement agreements for literally hundreds, if not thousands, of subdivisions and projects around the Woodlands. So this one was had a little more interest, but debated for a while. But what they did is kind of routinely what MUDs do. They offer reimbursement to the developer for water, wastewater, and drainage infrastructure. In exchange, the developer creates added tax value to the MUD, and that added tax value is used to help lower the tax rate and pay back the cost of that infrastructure. I mean, that's how the Woodlands has evolved over the last 20 plus years.
Stuart S. asks, has the Corps of Engineers given approval to the Bear Branch Flood Control Project?
It has been, we have met at least 3 times on a preliminary basis with the Corps of Engineers. They've given a nod that it's something that they can support. As we get refined modeling done, we'll be going back to them for final approval, but we do have their nod of approval on 3 different occasions in meeting with them.
And another question from John about what are the important issues. I guess we've covered that. I guess the bottom line is we're not sure what the important issues are amongst the 3 of us. So best to go talk to the candidates that are running for the board of your MUD.
But Walter, let's give Jim a chance to, if he wants to chime in. Jim, is there anything on the horizon out there from your standpoint that would be or could become an important issue that we need to look at and candidates need to be aware of so that if they do become MUD directors, they're kind of on top of their game, so to speak?
Well, we're regulated by TCEQ and have a lot of interaction with the Texas Water Development Board. You know, we would always encourage you, if you're going to be a MUD director or have an interest, that you're familiar with the regulatory oversight that they give us. You know, the debate regarding groundwater and surface water ongoing in this community, Montgomery County and the Woodlands, is certainly important. I would hope that everybody that has an interest in water would be up to speed on that and you know, form an opinion and then do some research. We've got, I know HARC has done a lot of work with our support and has a website that's very informative. But I think, yeah, just the future of groundwater, surface water, and how that interacts with the community is certainly going to be a topic going forward.
Good. Well, thank you.
And
Thank
here's
you,
a
Jim.
question.
Oh, go ahead, Walter. We need to wrap up.
Yeah, this
Go
is the
ahead.
last question, and it deals with the very topic. Do the MUDs have any influence or control over the percentage of groundwater versus surface water that is used?
We do, not regionally, but within the Woodlands. We have worked with the San Jacinto River Authority. I think one of my slides earlier showed that over the last few years, we have had a ratio of about 65% groundwater to 35% surface water. And there are a number of factors that drove that. But things have been able, operational adjustments have been able to be accomplished at the surface water treatment plant in Conroe, where we can take a 50-50 blend here in the Woodlands beginning this next fiscal year. And a lot of the factor is cost. The more surface water we take, the more surface water is much more expensive than groundwater. So it's trying to balance the needs of the community and the cost to the customer and keep those in balance, which drives that ratio. But we're proud to say we think we have a ratio for 50-50 for the next fiscal year without a big increase in that surface water conversion fee.
Thanks, Jim. We are out of questions.
Yep. Thank you, Walter. If there is a situation where we didn't answer a question or didn't get to a question, Walter and I will review these and we'll make sure that we post an answer, whether it comes from Jim or from us, on our website. Jim, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us tonight. You and your staff do a tremendous service to our community, and we appreciate not only what you do during your working hours, but we appreciate you being with us tonight to kind of clear up some of these, answer some questions and clear up some of the misstatements that might be out there, and just give us a great, gave us a great overview of what the Woodlands Water does and how MUDs work. So we really appreciate that. For all of those of you who are on the line, be sure to follow us at our website, TownshipFuture.org. We're on Facebook at TownshipFuture, Instagram, and Twitter. So we are going to keep up with the MUD races, and we'll get some information out to you guys as we indicated earlier. So be sure you follow us on our website, and make sure if you have any questions whatsoever, there's an info email address on our website that you can certainly put that to, and we'll get those questions answered for you. Be sure to look out for our next speaker series, which will be coming on a monthly basis, and that'll be listed on our website as well. Thank you all very much. Early voting does start April 25th. Election day is the 7th. We will post that on our website as well. Walter, thank you so much for setting everything up. And I'm here in Arizona on vacation this week, so I'm going to go enjoy a little bit of the Tucson sunshine. So thank you guys very much for being here.
Thank you for
Yes,
having me.
thanks, Jim. Appreciate it. Thank all the attendees and the good questions.
Yeah, great questions.
So what did Gary Moore used to say? Gerber Throckus Mortimer. Anybody remember that?
No. Only Walter would come up with that as we're closing out this very important, very important
Good
piece
night,
of
everyone.
information. Good night, Walter. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Jim.